Thanks for tuning in. One of the most requested recipes ever since I started this channel is for stroopwafels. I didn't have one of those recipes because I would just order them online from one of the Dutch stores, or I would ask my parents to put some in one of their care packages. I'm always up for a challenge, so I started doing a lot of research and experimentation, and I've come up with a very straightforward recipe that makes delicious stroopwafels, if I may say so myself. Hi, I'm Toine and welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking foods from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies such as Indonesia. As a kid, I loved going to the markt with my mom or grandma. The markt is where local farmers and vendors would come together in our neighborhood once a week to sell their wares. Whenever we would go, I would beg my mom to take me to the stroopwafel cart, where they made fresh stroopwafels. These were twice as large as the ones that you would get at the grocery store, still warm, ooey-gooey, absolutely delicious. Even now, to this day, that is the gold standard when it comes to stroopwafels. If you ever get the chance to go to Amsterdam, go to the Albert Kuip markt and try one of those fresh stroopwafels, and you'll see what I mean. To make the stroopwafel dough, you will need 245 grams of all-purpose flour, 120 grams of room temperature softened butter, 70 grams of superfine sugar, 1 egg, 10 grams of instant yeast, half a teaspoon of cinnamon powder, 1 tablespoon of lukewarm milk, and 2 grams or a scant half a teaspoon of salt. We're going to start by creaming the butter, sugar, and cinnamon together in a stand mixer with the paddle attachment. So I'm going to put those ingredients in the bowl. And we're going to cream this together. Going to scrape down the edges of the bowl to make sure everything gets mixed thoroughly. Next, we are adding the milk and the yeast. And we're going to mix that through as well. And now I'm going to add the egg. While the egg is being incorporated, I will add the salt to the flour and stir it through very well to make sure it's evenly distributed, and then we're going to add this to the wet ingredients. I'm scraping the walls of the bowl again. Be aware that this won't look like a smooth mixture. The egg and the butter and the milk won't fully incorporate until we start adding the flour, but that's okay. So this mixture is as combined as it's going to be, so I'm now going to add the flour and mix this through. Start on low. When there is no more dough stuck to the sides of the bowl, you're done. What I'm going to do now is take the bowl off the mixer, dust some flour on my work surface, and knead this together for a little bit. Take the ball of dough and just knead it a little bit. The goal here is to develop a little bit of gluten, a little elasticity in the dough. It's a soft dough, slightly wet, a little bit sticky from the butter, and all I'm doing is working it just to develop a little bit of gluten. I have my scale ready, a cookie sheet with some parchment paper on there. I'm now going to divide the dough into 50-gram balls. It should make approximately, oh wow, look at that, 50. It's like I've done this before. It's going to make approximately 10 stroopwafels with this amount of dough. This is too little. When I was working on developing the recipe, I tried really hard to make it so you didn't need any special equipment or special ingredients. And I got pretty close. Unfortunately, you do need a waffle iron to make these. I have tried every method I found online of making stroopwafels without an iron, and they're just not the same. They don't meet my high standards. So you will need a waffle iron, but stick around. until the end of this video, and I'll show you a less expensive alternative to my preferred waffle iron for making stroopwafels. I have covered the dough balls with some plastic wrap, and I'm going to put it in a warm spot for about 45 minutes to an hour to let the dough rest. While the balls of dough are resting, it's time to make the syrup. For this you will need 175 grams of keukenstroop. I'll go over what that is in a minute. 100 grams of brown sugar, 75 grams of soft butter, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, and a pinch of salt. I'm using unsalted butter, which I always do whenever I'm baking. If all you have is salted butter, leave out the pinch of salt. Keukenstroop is a Dutch sugar product, typically made of beet sugar, that we put on pancakes or even on bread. I couldn't find a direct replacement in the United States. The closest I could get was a combination of treacle and golden syrup. 1 part treacle, 2 parts golden syrup. That came pretty close to this, but this is far superior. I'll put a link to 2 online stores where we buy our Dutch products from that sell this year-round. To make the syrup, all we have to do is warm up and combine all the ingredients. So just put it all in the pan. And a pinch of salt. Over medium-low heat, we're going to just warm this up and stir it around until all the sugar crystals are gone and the butter is fully melted. The goal of this is to melt and combine all these ingredients and make the syrup warm and spreadable. You won't be able to spread it once it's cold. So what I typically do after this is ready is put it in a glass bowl on top of a pan with some simmering water. That keeps the syrup warm enough to be spreadable without the risk of burning the sugar. So we're not trying to caramelize the sugar here, we're just melting it all together. Often in the United States, when you see bakeries or stores sell stroopwafels, they say caramel filled, but that isn't really the traditional filling. The traditional filling is the sugar syrup with butter and brown sugar. Okay, you can see the bubbles starting at the edge. So I'm going to now turn the flame off and we'll be ready to start making the stroopwafels. I'm ready to make stroopwafels. I have everything set up. Here is the waffle iron I prefer to use. It is the Palmer Manufacturing Belgian cookie waffle iron. The thin version works great. I have my balls of dough under some plastic wrap. I have the syrup here over a little tea candle burner because I want to do it here. Normally I do it near the stove with the double boiler like I said, but this is warm enough to keep the syrup nice and liquid. I have a 10 centimeter cookie cutter. I have a spatula that I'm going to use to put the syrup on the waffle. And I have a sharp paring knife that we're going to use to slice the waffle into 2 thin pieces. We're going to open the waffle iron, take a ball of dough, and put it a little bit closer to the hinge, not perfectly in the center, a little bit closer to the hinge, and then close it, close the latch, and now we're going to wait for 1 minute. You will also notice that any steam that is coming out will go down quite a bit around that 1 minute 10 mark. So there are a couple of things that you're looking for in a waffle iron and why this one is so good. First one, even heating. You want to make sure that there aren't hot spots so that one part of the waffle is way darker than the other. And the second thing that you want is something that preheat or that reheats really quickly so that in between you don't have to wait too long. Those 2 reasons are why this waffle iron is so great. The pattern is also exactly what a stroopwafel looks like. Okay, the minute mark is gone. There's still a little bit of steam coming out. One of the little puffs stopped. Okay, I'm going to open it with a spatula, take it out, and now we have to work a little bit quickly. So I'm going to close the waffle iron. With the cookie cutter, we're going to cut a nice circle out of it. Do not throw these trimmings away. I'll show you later in the video what you can do with it. And here comes the hard part. I use a paper towel to prevent myself, prevent my hand from burning. I'm going to slide the knife in parallel to the board in the center, and then I'm going to do a sawing motion with the hand that has my knife, but with my left hand I am rotating the cookie. Now when you go to the markt and you see people do this who do it for a living, they are so quick, it's not even funny. So now we have a perfectly split waffle. I'm going to let it cool off a little bit while I stir my syrup. I'm going to put some syrup on the spatula, grab a cookie, put it on there. This is a lot. That's good. We like our stroopwafels to be nice and filled. Don't go all the way to the edge. Put the second half on top, squeeze together until you see it right at the edge. That is the sign of a properly filled stroopwafel, when there's just a little edge of syrup coming out all the way around. And that's the first one, all done. And now with a piece of paper towel on top of it, just to prevent your hand from getting burned, slide your knife in towards the center, and now rotate the cookie while you make a sawing motion with the hand with the knife. You just want to move it back and forth while the cookie is rotating, and you can only do this while the cookie is still warm. When the cookie is cold, if you try to cut it, it will just fall into pieces. I told you to not throw away these trimmings. And why is that? Because a very popular snack when you go to one of those stroopwafel carts at the markt is they take these trimmings, they kind of break them apart, they put them in a bag, and they drizzle just a little bit of the syrup on it. And as a matter of fact, my niece prefers eating this over just a whole stroopwafel. And I remember as a kid eating these as well. You'd get a little baggie home and it was great, and all the way at the bottom of the bag was a lot of syrup, so yum. And I've saved the last dough ball to show you how to do it in the less expensive alternative. So the Palmer sells for approximately $80, and I believe it's well worth it, but it is a lot of money just to make stroopwafels. So we found this waffle cone iron for approximately $22. I'll put links to both of them in the notes below, and I'll show you what the differences are when you make it in the Brentwood. So this one does not get as hot as the Palmer, so it will have to cook a little longer, approximately a minute and a half. So since I only have one left, I sure hope it comes out. So we're going, by the way, watch out, this whole plastic gets hot. So you have to just grab this little gray lid here, or lip here. I'm gonna put the ball on and very slowly push the lid down. And what I do is I push the lid down until the little latch latches all the way closed. However, I am not leaving it latch closed because then the cookie gets way too thin. Okay, there it is. Now I let it go and I just nudge it up a tiny little bit, and now I'm going to set the minute and a half timer. I have made stroopwafels with this iron before and taken it to work, and nobody really noticed the difference. I did, however, because it cooks a little slower. There's a slight different texture in the cookie, and the pattern is different as well, but that isn't really the big deal. Okay, the timer is about to go off. Be very careful when you open this. Okay, so there we go. So right away you can tell that this one does not cook as evenly. As a matter of fact, even though it was on there for a minute and a half, I still think it is not quite done. So I'm gonna let it go for another 10 or 15 seconds. So the thickness here is not very even. It is thick on the front where the lip is, and it is thinner towards the hinge. So you want to make sure that you don't cut it too close to the thin side because you won't be able to slice it. So I typically try to get it as far towards the thick side as possible. Cut it. And now we're going to do the exact same thing. Even though the iron doesn't get as hot, the cookie is still pretty darn hot. Okay. So I clearly didn't cut it evenly. You can see there's this little wedge here that is very thin and a lot thicker here. So I'm going to put the syrup on the thicker side. I actually need a little more. Place it on top. And you can see the color is not as even as in the other iron. Favorite time of every video I make is tasting the food. So I've put the stroopwafel made with the Palmer iron on the left here and the one with the Brentwood on the right. Some very obvious differences are just the waffle pattern between the two. The Palmer is small and deep and the Brentwood is large and shallow. And then of course the color is so much different. If I were to let this sit in the Brentwood until this lighter edge would get this perfect color, some other areas would be way too dark. I'm actually going to make a cup of coffee because that is my favorite way of enjoying a stroopwafel. It's also really good with a hot cup of tea. So before I take a bite of this stroopwafel, when I grew up in the Netherlands, we would eat these with coffee just next to it. My grandma sometimes would dunk it inside of a coffee. However, when I moved to the United States and stroopwafels gained popularity, there were these stories of, oh yes, the Dutch people put their stroopwafels on top of a hot cup of coffee so that the steam of the coffee warms the syrup on the inside. Never seen it my entire life. Then a year or two later, I'm on a video call, a Zoom call with a Dutch colleague of mine, and I'm looking at his desk and I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, I'm heating up my stroopwafel over my cup of tea. So I don't know if this always existed in the Netherlands and my family just never did it, or if the lore of the United States kind of moved back over the pond and now is incorporated in Dutch culture. No idea, but if you want to do it, go for it. Makes sense, I guess, to warm up the stroopwafels. I typically just put them in the microwave for 5 to 10 seconds to warm up the syrup, or I eat them right when they come off the iron. Eet Smakelijk. Delicious. The cookie is not too sweet, has just a hint of cinnamon, and that syrup on the inside, I don't even know how to describe it. It tastes like home. Absolutely great. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to share it with your friends. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll post a written recipe on my website, toineskitchen.com, and you can find me on social media as well. If you make this recipe, I would love it if you take a picture of it, post it on Instagram with the hashtag ToinesKitchen, and I will feature it on my story as well as on my website. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.